The country has been talking about her for a week, and tonight former Alaska Governor Sarah Palin goes on the record. In minutes, you are taking a ride on Governor Palin's book tour bus, but first, Governor Palin gives you the inside story on her dinner with Reverend Billy Graham, talks about the health care battle, and rates the best and worst of President Obama. Governor Palin on the record. Governor, nice to see you.
Thank you so much. You too.
So, Governor, do they read in Alaska?
Yeah, we read in Alaska. We stay in touch with the real world.
All right, I'm just teasing you,
That's
obviously.
funny.
All right, we should probably say you have an Army T-shirt on, so just to sort of set the stage,
Yeah.
what's today? Where are we today?
Heading to Fort Bragg. Can't wait to meet the troops and those who love the troops. And the book is dedicated to patriots who serve our country and have served in the past. So it'll be a great book signing event where we can be there thanking these guys and gals.
Last night you had a special dinner?
Oh, it was special with Billy Graham, with his family. It was quite significant to me. He being one of my heroes, just such an icon. Beyond that, though, but beyond who he is as a personality or a character, just his advice that he has given to me, though maybe he didn't know that he was giving it to me over all these years, but to so many of us, and his counsel through his teachings. It's meant so much to get to meet him face to face and thank him and hear from him personally. It was a wonderful evening.
How is he? Because, you know, he's an older gentleman.
Mentally, he is so sharp. He is there and had great conversation. Physically, of course, at age 91, anybody's going to slow down a little bit, but he's a beautiful, beautiful human being, and it's just such a pleasure to get to speak with him.
Well, we've been lucky to go to North Korea, of course, with Franklin's son.
Yes.
Franklin at the dinner?
Franklin was there. I so enjoy always speaking with Franklin. He's done a lot of good work up in Alaska. Samaritan's Purse has helped rebuild through some pretty challenging times in some of our villages, schools, community centers, homes. They just finished up some homes this last summer that had been devastated by an ice flood up there. Very generous, and his heart there is with Alaska. He's got a place up there. He's quite the outdoorsman, and great to get to speak with him too.
As I was driving to get here today, I heard on the radio that since you're doing the Army visit today, unemployment for people returning home from the war is at 15%.
Mm-hmm. That's atrocious, huge numbers. And it's not just, of course, military returning home and our troops. Geez, they deserve this employment opportunity, I think, more so than anybody else. They're making these sacrifices, putting their careers, putting education opportunities even on hold so that they can get out there and serve their country, serve something greater than self. To be essentially punished by this lagging economy right now by not seeing job opportunities upon their return is unacceptable. Job opportunities are going to be created when our federal government will quit taxing those who are creating the jobs, not quit taxing, but reduce the taxes and start incentivizing small businesses especially, so that this economy can become more robust. We'll see jobs created, not government doing the creating of it, private sector, and then our troops are going to be able to come home and capitalize on some of the great things that are American industry and job opportunities that should be there waiting for them.
All right, you talk about that's not just the military. That's indeed true. We've got unemployment in Detroit, for instance, of 15%.
Yeah.
Nationwide, 10.2%. California, Nevada, Rhode Island, all these states are getting hit terribly. In light of the fact that we do have the stimulus bill, it was passed in February and signed, what would you do now if you were in charge?
I would not start talking about a second stimulus package. This is this bogus idea out there that growing more debt, another $1 trillion stimulus package that we hear rumored about in Washington, D.C. that's being talked about, when the first stimulus package that was almost $1 trillion of monies that the public coffers did not have, to spend this again in a second stimulus is nonsense to most Americans. The first stimulus package hasn't even been spent entirely, and it certainly hasn't been measured for any kind of success. So for Congress to start talking about, in the White House, a second stimulus package makes absolutely no sense. What we need to do is reduce capital gains tax, reduce taxes on corporations and small businesses and our income, so private sector, our families, our businesses can keep more of what we earn, can prioritize for our needs, reinvest, create jobs. That's how the economy is going to roar back to life. President Reagan did that back in the early 80s. He stayed true to his convictions that smaller government tax cuts would rebuild the economy. It worked. Let's learn from what he did back there in the 80s, not go down this nonsensical road, growing more debt, building more government, and expect that somehow magically everything's going to just work out okay.
Well, one of the problems that we do have is that there are different needs in different communities. For instance, Detroit is a different need than maybe Montana or something. We have such a huge country with different industry. How do you account for the fact that maybe the poor African American in Detroit, who has no skills, might be so vastly different than someone who loses a business in Northern California?
No, fundamentally, everything is the same. Fundamentally, America's economy was built on free market enterprise. It was built on these principles that allowed the private sector to grow and to thrive and prosper, and for our families to keep more of what we earn. Where we are right now in America, in about the last 11 months, is seeing this reversal of those principles that were applied to build up our economy. All of a sudden, we're thinking it's okay to grow debt in our country. It's okay to borrow money from countries that we will soon be so beholden to. It's okay to print money out of thin air and think, again, that everything's just going to magically work out. Fundamentally, everybody is equal in America. Everyone has equal opportunity to earn and produce and build. And the fundamentals of a strong economy have got to be applied again as they were, like I just said, back in the 80s when Reagan faced a worse recession than what we're facing today. Let's learn from that piece of American history and apply the same solutions.
What about health care reform? I assume that you want some health care reform. Maybe I'm wrong. Do we need health care reform?
Of course we do, because rising health care costs are just crushing some of our small businesses, especially small businesses that want to provide health care coverage for their employees, and they can't because it just costs too much. So there needs to be reform there. There's common sense solutions to this reform that we need to see. We can allow the interstate competition between insurers to let people go across a state line and buy insurance instead of the prohibition that we see today. We can cut down on the waste and fraud that President Obama insists will pay for his multi-trillion-dollar health care reform package that he wants the public to adopt. We can look at tort reform measures that will help reduce the cost. We don't have to just assume that the only solution to the health care challenges that America faces is for government to come in and take it over. That's 1/6 of our economy. Heaven forbid that the American people just give up on families and private sector industry and think, okay, government, you bureaucrats, you take it over. We can't figure out any innovative solutions, no intelligent solutions coming from us. Government, you do it for us.
Well, it seems to me that there's the rich we don't need to worry about. I mean, of course, there's the question of whether you want to tax the rich or more, and some do, some don't. Then you've got the middle class who might be out of jobs, but then you've got the very poor. Mm-hmm. And what do we do about the very poor in terms of employment, or even in terms of health care, in terms of even all the proposals put out there by the Republican side of the aisle? We still have a segment of our society who are really down and out. We have hungry people in this country.
And the very, very poor are taken care of. Nobody's going to be turned away from a hospital emergency room, for instance. Today, they're not turned away if they can't pay for that coverage. And that's fine, that's good. That is that compassionate heart of the American people and of our government. They're not going to be turned away. But even the very poor need to be able to capitalize on those free market principles that have to be applied to get our economy roaring back to life, and not look at, government shouldn't be looking at increasing the taxes on what government bureaucrats call the very rich. The very rich, for the most part, are business owners, small business owners who are creating the jobs. If taxes rise so rapidly on a small business that are creating jobs, they're just going to move their wealth elsewhere. That's why we're exporting some of our job opportunities into foreign countries where it's cheaper to do business over there, because the American government is increasing the taxes. We're disincentivizing businesses, not allowing them to expand and hire more people. So the very poor will be made much healthier, much more prosperous if our economy can get back on the right track by those free market principles finally being applied again.
Up next, more with Governor Palin. What does Governor Palin think is the best thing about President Obama, and what does she think is the worst thing? Governor Palin, no holds barred, next.